Today is day 3 of me reviewing the false prophets and the false messiahs of the world individually. I decided that I would oblige one that calls himself Saint Michael the Judge today. I will oblige him because he recently challenged one of my father's servants to do so. I'm not sure what this guy's real name is, but he claims that he was given the name Michael, claiming that he is the Michael that Daniel spoke of in Daniel 12:1. It says, "And at that time will Michael stand up, the great prince, which stands for the children of your people." And Daniel goes on to add that he is referring to the time of the great trouble at the end. And most know, or most believe, that we are at the end. So let's see if this character is standing up for our Creator's people or not, as he claims he is. I will start by discussing who his people are, or who his saints are. This is explained in Revelations 14:12. Here is the continuance of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of Elohim and the faith of Yeshua. So now all we need to do is figure out if this so-called Michael character is standing up for these saints, or if he is standing against them. This is pretty straightforward. I keep saying that it is not rocket science if you just believe our Creator's word. His word tells us what is true and what is false. There is a man who is joining in with what his Creator is restoring, and he is fighting to keep the commandments, and he is embracing the same faith that Yeshua possessed. I don't think that this man will mind me using his name because he has it posted on his YouTube page. His name is George. This Michael guy responded to a video on George's page, so I will just let his words speak on his own behalf. Michael's words speak on his own behalf. The conversation started like this. He wrote George and said, in response to his video, it was actually a video that our Creator has given for these end times about false prophets and such, that George re-uploaded to his page. And here's what Michael had to say. "So is your Lord the son of David?" Because Solomon, by the way, was the son of David, who built the temple that God has cast out of his sight, according to the book of 1 Kings. "If you insist on being under the law, you burn with the beast." That was, he says, referring to the beast that was spoken of in Revelation 17. Of course, Revelation 17 has nothing to do with being under the law. He's just something that he's tied in. And then he makes reference to 1 Kings 10:14. "Now the weight of the gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold," or 666 talents of gold. And he says, "It's your damnation, not mine." So he starts off condemning the law, and it looks like he is also falsely proclaiming that Yeshua did not come from the lineage of King David, if I'm hearing what he's saying here. He is telling George that his choice to live the Torah will be his damnation. Of course, he got this idea from the abomination of desolation, Saul of Tarsus, and he upholds his teachings as well. The writings of Yeshua and Moses and the other prophets plainly teach that Saul is false. He was false, and his writings today are false. I'm not going to address his reference to 1 Kings because I recently explained this verse that he quoted here, that the man he's referencing to in the video entitled 666 explains this, how the reference there tied into the mark of the beast indeed. This man is making the claim that Solomon was the beast, but what he neglects to say is that Solomon was told by Yahweh the second time that he appeared before him that as long as he would continue in his commandments and statutes and judgments, then there would always be one on the throne of Israel. It sure does not appear that Yahweh was condemning his own statutes and judgments and commandments. He was clearly making walking with him conditional on Solomon keeping them. And then we know the story. Solomon departed from them. This man makes his claim about the Torah with no regard for the fact that the prophecies for the end times are against the scattered nations of Israel because they have forsook the Torah. And it's all about returning. These prophecies are all about Israel returning to the Torah. So how in the world do all these false prophets make these claims? I have no idea. Well, they're deceived. They want to believe Satan and his boy Saul of Tarsus and all the other liars that have been into their false teachings. In any case, I just read you where the book of Revelations outlines the descriptions of the saints who this guy is attacking. not just attacking George here in his response. George's response to him was a collection of verses. He started off with the verse that I just quoted in Revelation 14:12, so I'm not going to put that one back up again, but his next verse was, "And hereby we know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. He that says that I know him and does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him." 1 John 2, verses 3 and 4. And then the next verse he said, "And showing mercy to thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments." Exodus 26. So he was given the commandments. In John 14:15, "If you love me, keep my commandments." Yeshua is speaking. And the last verse that George responded was, "Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, and in your name have cast out devils, and in your name done many wonderful works? Then I will profess unto them," Yeshua says, "I never knew you. Depart from me, you that work iniquity." And George, of course, points out that iniquity is the Greek word anomia, which means lawlessness. So there are those who practice lawlessness, is who he's going to say, "Depart from me." So George just let the word of Elohim and his son speak for itself. And what was this guy's response to George? There must have been a dialogue between them that I do not have, but it's not important. They were obviously talking about keeping the Torah, or keeping the law. However, I don't know if they were using the word Torah or not, but certainly what George is talking about. And he wrote George back and said, "I don't preach him crucified, though he was. I preach him resurrected." Nothing wrong with that itself. It's just where he takes it. "I think you nail him to the cross continually in your mind. Try reading the book of Hebrews and get out of that dead law book." So more condemnation of the book. Just incredible. And even when we read the prophecy speaking of this time, it talks about returning to the book of the law, or the Torah, which this guy calls the dead law book. And of course, Yeshua said he didn't come to get rid of one punctuation mark from what this guy calls the dead law book. Ooh, shaking in my boots, he used to tell me, try to challenge me. Anyway, he's condemning Yeshua himself, a blasphemous liar. He goes on, "There is a book of the law that speaks against your kind," against the Messiah's kind, is who he's talking about. "How about doing a video against me?" he says. "Well, that's why I'm doing this video. And we'll see how good you do. How's that, you proud, damned bastard?" Wow. Bold, bold man indeed. His wrath is coming. One thing happens often with Satan's boys. They like to respond with anger when you talk about the need to keep the Torah. Or if you give them correction, they get themselves all tied up in a fit like little children. And then they start to accuse the one that is upholding our Creator's righteousness. And the other thing that they nearly always do is say that they do keep the commandments. This was the guy's following statement. "I keep the commandments, but you don't know them, because he is dead to the dead who awaits eternal punishment. Dispute this, video coward. Saint Michael, the judge of you," he says. "Whatever your name is, you are nobody's judge, and you are not the Saint Michael." George wrote him back with a mature answer. He said, "I told him that I have more important things to do for our Father than dispute silly videos." George astutely observed to me, "It seems these terrors like to dispute and argue." And he said, "I just blocked him. I can't be dealing with children like this. Disobedience." Good that George recognized they are like children. And I agree with George's response. However, I have a job to do, because it was given to me to stand up for the children who will be found doing their Father's will. And many of those who will become his children are still listening to people like this guy, because they are still in the captivity. There are many who are still listening to people like this, nearly the whole world. And they need to be exposed, and why they are false. Many of them make the gospel of the abomination of desolation their source for all truth, instead of the prophets, instead of Yeshua's words. I am standing for the people who want to become my Father's children by exposing the fraudulent teachings of these false prophets. My message to this guy is, my name in the flesh is Michael. I find this no coincidence, since what I am doing is fulfilling the prophecy in Daniel about Michael standing up for his people. I have been given the temporary name of Zerubbabel, but this name is just a job description defining the one who was plucked out of the captivity. The evidence is obvious that this guy calling himself Michael is standing against the saints of the Most High and not standing for them. If you can refute this, you obviously have a different set of scriptures than I have. Or, of course, you're just putting your understanding all on Saul of Tarsus' writings, which this man has done. At least the evidence should be obvious if you believe the writings of the two eyewitnesses, John and Matthew, and the prophets of the Old Testament, and not Saul as your source. This babbler is standing with and for the abomination of desolation, Saul of Tarsus, and he is standing with his father the devil. I'm angry with these false prophets like this because they lead others to the lake of fire. I posted a video yesterday about the false prophet Ron Wineland. I met people in Ron's organization that I love dearly, and it hurts to see them remain in captivity to his lies and headed for the lake of fire. I just received a letter this morning from someone who recently lost a close friend to the guy calling himself Lord Rael that I spoke against a couple of days ago. This man that wrote me can see how there will be many who will follow after the lies of this impostor Messiah, because he tells them what they want to hear. They want to hear the come as you are message, and do not want to hear about repentance and turning to our Creator's narrow path. This guy calling himself Michael says that he is the judge. Well, what does Yeshua, our Messiah, say about what will judge us? In John chapter 12, verse 48, he that sets me aside, and he was the Logos of Elohim, and does not lay hold of my sayings, has one that judges him. The word, or the Logos, that I have spoken, the same will judge him in the last day. This guy has most assuredly set the truth aside for the lies of Saul of Tarsus. The truth is the Logos of Elohim. That's what he said. You're setting the Logos of Elohim aside. This man does not lay hold of our Messiah's teaching. He lays hold of Saul of Tarsus' teachings, and they are two altogether different sets of instructions. George exposed this, and this guy's response is that he does keep the commandments. As I said, this is a typical response from the deceived. I'd like to know which ones that he keeps. There sure is not any evidence on his site that he is keeping them or teaching others to keep them. I have no idea if he upholds the false day of Saturday or the false day of Sunday worship. None of these things probably matter to this guy, because it is not his focus. His focus is on being at war with the government of men. I certainly did not see this being Yeshua's focus. Yes, the governments of men are evil, but this is not to be our focus. Our focus must be letting our Creator mold us in His image. This is why we were created. This guy and the other false prophets seem to not understand this, and their focus is elsewhere, and they lead their flocks to focus elsewhere. Our Creator gave us His Torah to accomplish teaching us His righteous character. Remember, this whole dialogue between this self-appointed judge and George started over him condemning the law and telling George that he was damned to keep the law. In any case, all will be judged by the Logos of Elohim, including this man. This is the same Logos that the saints had to embrace in order to become His saints. It is the same Logos that our Messiah became in the flesh, and just as each of us is commanded to follow Him and become it as well, we are to follow Him, and He is the Logos of Elohim. If you can't see that we're not to follow the Logos of Elohim, somehow some dots are not connecting between one ear and the next. It is the measuring rod that the temple, or the 144,000, was measured with, and it is the same measuring rod that all will be judged by and measured with. The judge is not some self-proclaiming Saint Michael. The word of Elohim testifies that this guy is standing against his saints and not for them. As I said, he asked George to refute some video. I do not know what this video was, but I am confident that I've already refuted it in these videos. I am sure that it is loaded with the blasphemous lies of Saul of Tarsus, and I have already spoken how our Creator's true word refutes Saul's teachings in several of these videos. So I won't bother doing so today. Moses recorded that if anyone tries to lead you to a different version of Yahweh Elohim, they are to be put to death, so that they do not poison the flock with their lies and lead others to the lake of fire. This is what Saul accomplished. He poisoned the scattered nations of Israel with the make-believe Elohim and a make-believe Messiah that do not require us to be made in their image. He brought forward a different path. The problem is we were created for this purpose, so Saul's teachings and his followers' teachings, like this guy calling himself Michael, defy why we were created. I am merely warning all of you who want to be delivered from the coming wrath to flee from these ravening wolves and flee from them quickly. Judgment is at the door, and it's not this guy's judgment. Just as Yeshua said, you have one that judges you. I suggest that you measure yourself against this standard and not some make-believe standard brought forth by the abomination of desolation.